that are looking to join us. So, hello, everybody that's just joining us. But we have a lot that we want to cover today, and we have a little bit of an agenda, but we leave this presentation pretty wiggly so that Dan can answer specific questions. So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Nat. I'm from the Big Cheese here at Twiniversity. Started this ridiculous twin parenting revolution, as I like to call it, almost 16 years ago. Dan and I have been working together almost as long. So Dan and I had a chance meeting at a baby event in New York City where I was like, oh my God, I got to get serious about these things. I bumped into him. I remember that I wouldn't use the word manic, but maybe I would because I did not know all the things that I still had to do, even though my kids were here. So I do not come from a family that was very prepared with legal documents and savings. And I just didn't grow up like that. So I didn't know anything about wills. I didn't know stuff about life insurance. I just knew that we needed these things, maybe. But then I'm like, do you really need them if my parents didn't have them? And as I get older, I realize how critical these documents are to have and just to have an overall plan. So Dan has been helping me every step of the way, and he doesn't just help me personally, but he has helped hundreds of Twiniversity families throughout the years, and I do not know what I would do without him because I always say, right, as a good New Yorker, everybody needs a guy. Dan's my guy. So Dan's my guy when it comes to anything from financial decisions that I'm making to health insurance, like health insurance, not actual health. Like, Dan, should I get a cleaning? I'm not doing that. I'm not calling. Although I would, and I'm pretty sure you would be like, yes, it's been 6 months. I'm sure you keep better records of that than I do. But Dan has really got me and my husband John on the straight and narrow. And I'm just so appreciative to have him in my life. And I realize that not everybody has a Dan, and not everybody has an opportunity to manically run into somebody and ask 1,000 questions and get them answered. So I want to make sure that anybody that's my guys are your guys too. So hence why we do this presentation a few times a year. We'll do another one about college savings. We'll do another one about baby budgeting. So know that Dan is genuinely my guy and he's the go-to for all this. So Dan, without further ado, meet the fam.
Hey everybody, nice to meet you. So I'm Dan Paikin. This is Matt Goldstein. He's in here also. He
Nice to
works
meet you,
with me.
everybody.
Um, and yeah, so going back, I've been doing this 18 years, and yeah, I think it was like 3 years in, I met Nat, and I've been working with Twiniversity ever since. And obviously become very close and good friends with Nat over that time. But I love this relationship I have with Twiniversity. I have made great clients, great friends from it. Um, and I what I do makes an impact on people's lives. And this is a time for many of you that I can provide the most value to you because here you are, you're having twins, life is going very quickly. There's a lot of things, uncertainty of what you should think about, what you don't know, what you don't know, you don't know. And really, the role that I play is to really just create some peace of mind for people, give them confidence of here are the things to be doing right now, here are the priorities, here's the steps to take to get there. But the ultimate goal is for you to be thinking about your kids and your job and knowing that your finances are taken care of because you've done the right things.
And that kind of brings me to the first question. So the way that we're going to do this today is I actually have a list of questions that I'm going to be asking Dan. So if you guys have questions too, throw them up in the chat. But the first question that I want to talk about is why is it important to do this now versus waiting? Right? Because we have people that are here pregnant and then like Paige's kids are already big. Like, I live by the saying it's only too late if you don't start now, but there's definitely a better time to do things. Why should we kind of rush to do things? And if we do, what do we need to do first?
Great. Yeah. So, look, whenever I work with anyone, first off, there's just a conversation to just understand people's situation, where they're at, their goals. From there, we're talking philosophy, but I also just need to understand everyone's finances, need to really get an understanding of where everything is. But philosophically, the first place I go, and I do this with whether you're expecting twins, whether you're single, whether you're 60 years old, is protection. Okay. Because philosophically, the planning that I do is very much a belief in protection needs to be first. The reason is because protection is something that when you need it, you can't get it, right? So the time to get it is when you don't need it. But really, if you think about building a plan, it's sort of like in the ancient times when they built castles. Before they built the castle, the first thing they did was build the moat, right? So we have to protect our future before we can start building today. So that's where we're going to talk about things like getting your life insurance in place, things like disability insurance, your legal documents, even like getting proper liability protection, if you're in a car accident, things like that. So all those are really what I talk about first because it really doesn't matter all these investment strategies we're talking about, all the tax efficiency, retirement planning, like you get hit by a car tomorrow, this is all out the window. So we have to button up your protection first.
So that leads us to think about the things that we have to do first, right? So we have to protect ourselves first. When you say protect us, what does that mean, Dan? Like for real? Like is that you talked a little bit about the liability insurance. There's so many things where like truthfully, even I who am fairly protected, I didn't know where to start. How do you know what needs to be protected the most first, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, there's four main areas of protection that are most important. Um, if we're going from most important,
Mhm.
it really is life insurance because there's really no coming back from that, right? And we got to make sure if God forbid anything happened to you, what you would want to have to go to your family, your spouse, your children, everything you would want in that situation needs to be set up. So that's probably number one. Followed closely by one that people often don't think about is disability insurance, really
Mhm.
long-term disability insurance. Many times this is offered through the company that you work with, but if you think about it, the greatest asset you have is just quite simply your ability to make an income, right? Like as long as you can go and work, you can solve a lot of financial products. You need that paycheck, but things can happen to us. We can get sick, we can get diagnosed, or you can be injured. This happens to people. I don't know, maybe some of you know someone that this has happened to, but that means you're unable to work.
Mhm.
And basically, disability insurance is a paycheck that replaces your salary, right? So, really want to be clear of what would happen in that situation. How do you make sure you're protected? What do you have through work? Are there ways to get more through work? Should you have an individual policy on top of it? But disability insurance is pretty important also.
Yeah.
Liability protection. So these are situations where you can be found liable in a lawsuit. Most common is a car accident, right? So what happens if you're driving and you look away for a second, you get into an accident, you hurt somebody, or worse, you kill somebody. The spouse of that person is going to say, my husband or my wife was making $200,000 a year and now they can't work because of you.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? You will be sued. And you could be in a situation where your assets are now at risk and your future income is at risk. So we need to hedge you against those risks. There's easy ways to protect you from a liability standpoint. But also, many of you may have nannies or babysitters now that you have these twins. What happens if the nanny hurts herself when she's watching the twins? What happens if she burns herself on a stove or a car clips her when she's walking the twins? These are all things that you could be sued for and found liable for. We got to make sure you're protected, set up properly for events like that. So those are really kind of the four priorities of oh, and then lastly is wills. I didn't say that. So yeah, getting your legal documents set up, very important. Goes right along with life insurance.
Yeah.
But your legal documents, they're not really for you. They're for the people you leave behind, right? Being very clear of who's in charge of raising your children if you're not around, who's in charge of the finances for them. There's even other documents where if you don't die, but you're incapacitated, who's making health decisions on your behalf? Who's making financial decisions on your behalf? All of these are really important that just make life a lot easier if, God forbid, something catastrophic happens.
Yeah, it's so interesting too that I think that a lot of people, including myself back in the day when I worked like a regular human, we think we already have these coverages, right? Because like, and my sisters, so guys, you guys know I don't work a traditional 9 to 5. I do the big cheese here stuff at Twiniversity. But like my sister's office, who's like a regular human worker, she has disability insurance, she has life insurance, she has all of these things set up. But I was not aware until Dan came into the picture. I didn't know that when you leave the job, they go with you. I mean, they do not go with you. So if you are, we, Dan and I have seen way too many things at Twiniversity, including people that were wonderful people. Everything was going good. They had great jobs, they had great benefits, and then they got catastrophically sick. When you leave because you need, God forbid, cancer treatments or other types of treatments, your life insurance doesn't go with you. And I did not know that. I really thought when I worked, 100 years ago in an office, I really thought that when I was paying for, an extra $3 a month for life insurance, that that was my policy. I did not know that. Dan, is that typical? Are most like company sponsored life insurance policies or disability insurance policies, are they specific to that company? Or is there ever a time where you get to take that policy with you?
Um, for some, most of the times you cannot. So I wouldn't say never ever. I've seen it. There's things like long-term care insurance through groups. Some maybe have that option, but very rarely do you see that. And look, when it comes to life insurance, my problem with group insurance is a couple things. Um, First off, like, is it enough? Usually these things they max out. Maybe you can get 1 million through work.
Mhm.
Like, first question is like, is that the right amount? Like, $1 million sounds like a lot. Like, is it really? Um, the second issue is that it's often not cheaper. Like the way group life insurance typically works is it's age banded.
Mhm.
So like you'll pay a certain amount from like 30 to 35, and then it goes up 35 to 40 and so on. Whereas we know if you're healthy and you can lock in a good health rating, like a 20-year term, you actually pay less over time than you would with these price increases. The last issue is that it's not portable. It doesn't go with you.
Yeah.
The world we're living in, we're coming and going from our jobs all the time. Um, so I almost always recommend getting an individual life insurance policy to my clients that you have.
But
Uh,
if they have one at work, should they do the $2 a month or whatever in addition to that? Like, is there ever too much that you could have?
it depends, but usually you're solving that with individual coverage. Now, that being said, there are situations where there are health issues,
Hmm.
and sometimes through group insurance, you're able to get more with no health underwriting. In those situations, by all means, let's take full advantage of it.
Yeah.
But more times than not, again, if you're doing the right planning, the bulk of your life insurance should be in individually owned policies, and you're not relying on group.
So could you have more than one personal policy?
Oh, you're talking to somebody who has about
I
nine.
know, I hate that about you. And once I learned that about you, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why
Yeah.
didn't you tell me this years ago? I only have one, guys, for the record, because I'm a life insurance snob. But I know, like, you use it not only as life insurance, but you use it as kind of like an investing tool as well, which is another thing I'd like for you to tell them about because I don't think a lot of people know that. Or if you do, I didn't.
Yeah. So gets into a conversation around the types of life insurance. And again, this is very specific to everyone's situation, whether it is appropriate or not. But just in general, there's basically two categories. There's temporary insurance, which is called term insurance, and then there's permanent insurance. And it's pretty simple. Term, you have that coverage for a certain period of time. You pay a premium for that. But if you outlive that, it goes away, right? There's no cost benefit to it or anything like that. Permanent insurance is just what it is. It's meant to be there forever.
Mhm.
Um, and again, there's different types of permanent life insurance. Permanent life insurance, and I'm mainly talking about whole life insurance, which is, I think, what I likely recommend for most people here. whole life insurance, there's actually no cost to it. It's a way to save money. So whole life insurance it's an asset and it's a strategy. So it's an asset that a lot of people like because it checks a lot of the boxes of what we want. It's an asset that you're doing this with a highly rated mutual insurance company and they can give you guarantees. And one guarantee is that it must grow, must go up. It can never go down. So it's going to grow like a guaranteed hockey stick shaped compounding curve. And that fits in well with maybe some of the risky assets, our 401k and our stock accounts and things like that, which we know go up and down, just like it is today, going up and down, where it's very valuable to have this constant, I know this is going to do for the rest of my life. This thing must go up and never go down, no matter what's happening in the economic world, is a valuable piece to have. Number two, it's liquid. So there's no cost. You can access the money in there that grows. The account is called cash value, and you can use it. You can use it for your kids' college. You can use it for a business investment. You can use it for borrowing out. You can use it as a pension. A million. You can use it for really anything you want. But it's almost like being your bank. You get 95% of that you can use for anything you want. So it's a great. I've used my policies. It's a great place to go.
Dan, do you
Uh,
have to pay that back? Like, how does that work? Is it like if you borrow money against your life insurance, like let's say for everybody here right now, okay, let's say hypothetically, they all decide to get whole life insurance. Then when it's time for their 20s to go to college, they have this money that they could take, that they could kind of borrow against from their
yep.
life insurance. What does that Honestly, I don't know what it means. Does that mean that they don't have to pay it back, but if they had $1 million and they borrowed 200,000, now they're only going to pay out at 800,000? Like, what happens with that money? And
Yeah,
is fees
you
associated? What, because that's a great way, like for everybody right here for college. Like, I think that's a kind of like a no-brainer, to be honest with you. I wish I would have done it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about whole life is just the optionality of it because it's very flexible. You can pay it back, you don't have to pay it back. Again, because of these guarantees where it's just compounding and growing, you can borrow against it. And because it's still growing and growing and growing, you really never have to pay it back. What it would ultimately mean is it's deducted from your death benefit if you
Hmm.
never paid it back. So it just means less money would go to your children and grandchildren or whoever, or your spouse or whatnot. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it. A lot of people, they die with policy loans, very common. They're using it for income and you can also withdraw from your life insurance also. It's not just borrow. So,
Yeah.
it really just kind of depends on the situation and what's great. But what's nice is you can access that money and you can decide whenever you want. It's sort of the greatest loan you can have because you can pay it back whenever you want. You can pay as much interest as you want. There's no deadline. It's always available to you. There's no credit check, and it's just a good source of capital.
Guys, for those of you that are here with us now, did anybody know that, or am I the last person? I'm genuinely curious to know what people know. So either you could do a thumbs up, you could do a thumbs up, yes, I know it, thumbs down, I had no idea. You could put it in the chat. But I don't know. I don't, is it just that my family was not somebody that did this? Like, Dan, did you know this before you started doing what you do?
No, of course, nobody. I mean, look, personal finance, it's not really like taught in schools and um, it's not talked about at the dinner table. So, I mean, especially when it comes to insurance, you know, you Google like life insurance, you're going to get 1,000 articles and 1,004 people and 1,000 against. So again, this kind of speaks to why it's very valuable to work with somebody, get a proper education, make sure you thoroughly understand something, and then you decide what's best for me and my family. But yes, that just to round out the conversation, um, the asset, major tax advantages to it as well. That's why people are attracted to it. It's a triple tax-free asset. So you contribute to it post-tax dollars, but it grows and grows and grows. You never pay taxes. You can access all the money whenever you want, never pay taxes. And when you die, it's completely income tax free.
Time out. So you're telling me, so for the record, and Dan, they know, well, you guys don't know. I tell you guys everything as our Twiniversity people. So Dan's been telling me to that I have this money sitting in my life insurance policy, and he's like, do something with it. And I'm like, no, because I thought I thought I had to pay it back, and I thought I'd have to pay taxes on it, but I apparently don't listen to you. So I think maybe that's what I've been doing. I'm so mad at myself
Just
right now.
listen to me, Nat.
You
Just
have no idea. I listen to you
yeah.
92% of the
I
time.
mean, it's like
8% that I can't pay
Nat
attention to.
Nat's a great example. She has a business and wants to invest in her business. It's a great place to go for investing in businesses. You can use it. What's the rate of return you're going to get on investing in yourself? And then at some point, maybe you want to pay the loan back or maybe you don't. But it's just a readily available place to I didn't want to make this a whole life insurance seminar here, but
But Dan, look
um
at the comments. Nobody knew that. So the thing
yeah.
is you're genuinely teaching us that's what we do, right? We're educators. Well, I'm an educator. I bring you along to educate my people, but nobody knew this. This is not common knowledge. I always thought that I didn't know it. So it's always like, oh, well, of course, it's another thing that yet I didn't know, right? But we can only do better when we know better. And this is
Yep.
how we could do better. But I'm even thinking selfishly because I know Paige very well, right? So I'm like, this would be great for the twins. Like, this would be a great thing. This is a great way for everybody to have college savings, right? And then also, my kids just turned 18. I already created a policy knowing everything that Dan taught me because I'm like, when my son wants to go buy a house, it's a minimal investment per year for him to have this chunk because I don't think I'm going to be like, here, buddy, here's a down payment for your house or here's money for your wedding. I want him to be able to be responsible for his own finances without the dependency on us. So, like, that was such a great asset. Okay, life insurance. This is so interesting, but we have two
Yeah.
questions. Hannah said they were advised to do a term life insurance. Is that going to be a negative in the long run?
No, I own some term insurance. It's not, look, my philosophy is get the right amount. Like that's the priority right now. Like God forbid anything could happen. We need to make sure you're
Yeah,
protected against something awful happening. The smallest outlay to do that is term insurance. Now, we were talking about permanent insurance. One thing to be aware of is the outlay is a lot more per death benefit, right? So you're not going to get cheaper than term insurance.
yeah,
Whole life, I don't like to use the word expensive or cheap because it's just how you save your money. It's
truth.
putting money into whole life is like putting money into your 401k. But the death benefit associated with the premium is a lot less. If it's like $1,000 a year gets to $1 million of term insurance, it's going to be more like 15,000 a year gets $1 million of whole
Yeah.
life insurance. So, it's just built a little bit proportion. That's why it's really has to fit into an overall savings plan. But most of my clients have a combination of both. I still have a combination of both. And you can convert that term. So maybe right now, whole life isn't in the cards. You got a lot of expenses with these twins. Like get convertible term in place, and when you start saving again and building, you can convert that. You don't have to go through underwriting again. We didn't talk about that, but there's a little process to get life insurance, and you're locked into it.
So let's talk about wills for a second, okay? Because I did not come from a family that ever did had a will. So I think John and I are the first generation. Nobody did, like literally. I'm still fighting. And so the story that I cannot believe is that, and Dan knows the story, but I'm going to tell you guys. My grandmother's sister, who was the youngest, so maybe like 20 years younger than my grandmother, she lived in upstate New York and she all lived by herself. She was always like a little bit of a reclusey, let's say. So she never was down in New York City with the rest of us. She was raised in Manhattan in the building where I am, blah, blah, blah. But when she passed away, we got word maybe 6 days after she passed away, after my aunt basically had sent a wellness check, and we found out that she had passed away. And interestingly, we then were very surprised to find out 7 days later that her neighbor had told us that my aunt had a will and that everything was left to the neighbor. And we were like, excuse us? She had no heirs, she had no children, she had no partner. So she left everything to the neighbor. Fine. We're like, okay, never even heard of this. We still were in contact with her for years. And when we went to court, we found out that the will was just a paper that was scanned from a will template in a Staples copy shop and was handwritten in. And we cannot prove that the neighbor forged the signature, but there was nothing what I thought legal would be about it. But because my aunt didn't have anything with a lawyer and didn't have anything on file, it was very hard to prove anything but. I don't know if that story is that typical, but I do know that you need to get things done correctly and not by photocopying things in Staples, because whether my aunt wanted that or not, there's still a piece of me that totally thinks that her neighbor just stole literally everything from her, which is, which still to this day. She took the house, she took every single asset, everything, every piece of memorabilia that my aunt had. We were entitled to none. She also wouldn't release my aunt's ashes to us, even though my aunt didn't want to be cremated. But because this will said that she made all the decisions, because I think she also scanned a healthcare proxy, I just couldn't believe that these things like this even happen, which is absolutely ridiculous. So the moral of the story is you got to do things, but you got to do them correctly so that even after you are not here, you know that you could rest peacefully wherever you are, that your kids are taken care of. Dan, what is the typical process? I know what John and I went through, but like when somebody needs to get a will, what's the process and what are the questions and what documents do they need to bring with them for the day that they start making these big decisions?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do is I'll prep my clients with a lot of the decisions prior to meeting with an estate attorney. So first off, I almost always recommend working with an estate attorney to get this done. Um, Part of the reason we're getting a will is, God forbid, something awful happens. If something awful happens, you need an estate attorney, and you want to establish that relationship with a person who knows you and knows your situation. I also recommend you work with an estate attorney in your state. A
Mhm.
lot of probate laws are very state specific. You want an attorney who is knowledgeable, who has experience in your state. So, but yes, you're going to need some basic information. You're going to need some basic net worth information. But, the main reason for all of you to get a will is not really about your finances. That's important, though. But it's more about what you would want to have happen with your children if something were to happen to both parents, right? And maybe it's one parent, depending on the situation. But you want to clearly define who the guardian is. This is the person who is responsible for raising your children if you and your spouse are not around, right? So, very clearly defining this. You want to have a primary, you want to have a backup. It's typically advised this person should be somebody within your age range. You can name a parent. It's not ideal. You have kind of a parent taking care of a teenager. But I will tell you that if you can come to a decision on who that person should be, the rest is easy because that's the number one reason that prevents people from getting their will is just deciding who that guardian should be. So, talk that one out. But, and again, you want to have a primary and a backup. The backup should not be like the spouse of the primary. You're trying to avoid situations where there's a divorce, things like that. You're going to need a trustee. So that's in charge of the finances, right? So money's being left. You're going to have life insurance, things like that. Well, we want to make sure that money grows and is vested well. And obviously, when your children need things, they need a car. They're going to say, you're getting a Honda, you're not getting a Porsche. I know your mom and dad. Um, so that's the trustee. You're going to name an executor. So that's at the time of death, really designating everything you'd want. It's a pain in the neck to settle an estate. You got to pay attorney fees. You got to pay probate costs. That's the executor's job is dealing with all that. That's the one job it's often recommended should be different than the guardian, just because it's a devastating time. You don't want the person taking care of your children to be settling your estate. Um, Other things like without a will, if you have money left, when your children turn 18, they get a check, right? That money goes into a court-appointed trust.
Mhm.
And then when they turn 18, they get that. So that is not a great situation for somebody young who lost their parents early to now get that amount of money when they turn 18. So you would oftentimes set up distribution ages. Very common is like 33% at age 30, 33% age 35, 33% age 40. It could be whatever you want. Um, those are the main reasons to get a will. Now, are there financial perspectives? Yes. What would you want happen to this money? Um, there are trusts to talk about. These are kind of very specific for people's situation. But what the action step here is to meet with an estate attorney and get the conversation going.
It's critical, critical. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10 important to work with somebody. So, Dan and I both unfortunately have firsthand experience with needing real people to help us do real stuff. But not only does the estate attorney do your will, but our estate attorney also did our healthcare proxies and all that other stuff. So, we just got everything done at the same time. And for everybody that's watching that's currently pregnant, you should do this now because the other thing is once the 20s get here, you're not going to have a minute to have a clear mind. So this is such a good opportunity, which is why I get excited when I see that everybody or so many people are expecting that are here. It's because this is the time to do that. So we have a
It's
few
a good
questions.
point, Nat. A lot of people think I'll do this after the twins are born.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. When you're naming your will, you're not naming your children's name. It's just your children. So you don't need to have a name for them yet. It is a good time to do it before the babies come. Like while pregnancy is when wills often get done because
Yep.
it's kind of less crazy than when these twins are running around.
Yeah, and you know that they're going to be here, so you write them into the will, but it's never their names. And at some point, if you want to make changes, you could make changes. Just because you write a will today doesn't mean that in 5 years you can't go and amend it. My mother apparently text Ken, message Ken quite a few times to change things, which was so good because
Yep.
the older that my mom got, the more clarity she had on the way that she wanted things done. And I was so happy that she was able to do that and have it in writing and have it legally on paper. And I thought that that was just an absolutely magical thing. And I'm very lucky that Dan connected me with somebody great. So I have some questions and it has to do with that. So Taylor asked, if you move states, do you have to have a new attorney change your will? Or it's like the will is, it's done no matter where you
Will is good.
from?
I mean, is it a good idea? Yes, in a different state. In reality, it's fine. It's more if you leave countries. If you leave the country, that matters a lot more. But it's obviously still binding if you move states or whatnot. It's just uh, probably a good idea to have a local estate attorney look it over and suggest any changes based on just the local laws.
Okay. And Tiffany said that she missed, should the trustee be the guardian or should this be different or is it the same? The trustee
Yeah,
and guardian,
it's a
same person, different people.
good question. There's sort of pros and cons to that. The guardian and the trustee can be the same person, and sometimes that just makes things easier, to have you just control of it. You got the kids, you're dealing with the money. That said, the trustee should be somebody who has some financial sense, or at
Mhm.
least have access to somebody who has some financial sense. So if, your guardian is somebody I love them. I trust them to raise my children, but I do not trust them with money. Then you probably would want to have a different trustee. But if you know they're capable, it may make things easier for it to be the same. My wife's sister is our guardian and our trustee. My brother is the executor. So like that's very common is a situation like that.
And then is there a negative to using services to write your will and do insurance stuff like Gerber apparently has a service for that. So what is the benefit or negative to going with like a giant company like Gerber or even like AAA offers life insurance and stuff like that? Like why would we go to a broker or a finance person overall like you versus just being like, let me just do this quickly online?
Yeah. Well, we'll start with like legal services. So you can like get a will on like Zoom or what is it? Legal
Legal
Zoom,
Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So I mean, look, my feeling is like, could that be cheaper than working with a state attorney? Yes. Are the documents going to be detailed and as tailored? No. That being said, like it's better than nothing. like I'd rather you do that than not have a will. So if that's the bare bones of what you do, but by all means get it done. Is it optimal? No, but it's better than nothing. Um, and look, when it comes to life insurance, I mean, look, life insurance is a big financial decision. I think it's right there with buying a house, like the biggest financial decision you'll make in like the early years of your life. It's very important to work with somebody, to have a relationship with somebody, to figure out what's right for you, what's appropriate for you, to understand the different companies, how these products work. Again, like you want to get cheap term insurance? Yeah, you could do it, but like, you're going to have this thing for a long time. You're going to need help with servicing. Things happen. It's important to have that relationship. But certainly when it comes to things like permanent life insurance, you have to have a relationship.
Yeah.
You're putting a lot of money into something over a long period of time. You might use it. You're going to forget why you did it, the value of it. So, by sure, you really want a relationship for that.
Yeah.
And you want somebody who's like not just ideally just going to talk to you about insurance. It's important to understand how this fits into everything else you're doing. You're saving, you're investing, your legal documents, your mortgage, like life insurance should be in the context of a bigger financial plan.
So we'll skip the Gerber. I always thought about that too. I remember when the babies were first born, like you get all these things in the mail. And so I think like everybody gets the Gerber life insurance for your baby as low as a penny a day or
Yeah.
whatever. You're like, "Oh, this sounds so great." And we did not do it at the time, but I think there was a piece of me. If we had more time, I would have done it, but there was definitely a piece that was like, this is too good to be true. Like I
Yeah.
don't like what exactly is this
I
about?
mean, I've actually looked at, they're not bad. They are whole life pop, but again, it's just a limiting. It's not enough. Those policies are not sizable and they're not really appropriate for what you would want to have happen in, that situation. So,
Yeah. So if you were to say, okay, to everybody that's here, and for guys, put your questions in because our time is running out. I know Dan's got to go back to reality and Matt has to go back to his reading addiction in his library that he's currently in. But if we had to prioritize, right, like genuinely, now we've gotten kind of like a little background on each of the topics. What should somebody do? Like when they get off here, they should Google what? They should do what? What is the first actionable item that somebody should take after hanging out with us for, 40 minutes?
yeah, I mean, look, I always say you should work with somebody. Like, again, someone good. It's hard to decipher that, but, that's what Matt and I are here for. We've had this relationship with Twiniversity and we care about that. And, we'll certainly be reaching out to see if you're interested in a conversation. But even if it's not us, encourage you to work with somebody to help you with this. Um, but look, the priorities are it's sort of like protect, save, grow. Okay, so when it comes to financial planning, what do most people do? Like, oh, you got to invest, you got to grow your money over time, and that's important. I believe the priorities should be in reverse. Like the first thing you do is protect yourself. Then we focus on saving, creating saving systems, ways to get you to maximize what you can save, having discipline around cash flow. Your savings rate is more important than your rate of return. Okay, so if we can find ways that can help you save more, you'll have more money than if I found a better investment for you. So it all starts and ends with cash flow and getting your savings down. Then we focus on investing in growth strategies and things like that. But again, the priorities are protect, save, then grow, not the opposite, which
Yeah.
unfortunately is what most of people in my industry do.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems that way, right? Because if you think about like financial planning, everybody always thinks about how, I'm putting money in the stock market or we're going to put something in an IRA. You're so unbelievable. For real. And Matt, you're so lucky to play with Dan on a regular basis because truthfully, like I know that this is a job for you guys, but the difference that I know that you've made in my life is incredible. But also just thinking about Dan, the families that we've worked together. right? Like we've had people whose nannies have gotten injured on the job. We've had people who got catastrophic diagnosis of things. And like Dan honestly knows more about things than I do. So Dan will be like, "Oh my God, you should call this mom. She just had the babies and she's still in the hospital." I'm like, "How do you know that?" And Dan's like, "I've been working with them for, 4 months or whatever." But for real, for everybody that's here, like genuinely, Dan and Matt will reach out to you guys. You do not have to play with them by any means, but everybody needs a guy and let them be your guys. There's no reason. They don't, I have never paid them one penny in the entire time that I have played with them. They have never charged my mother-in-law, which I would charge my mother-in-law just for being her. I would charge her an extra fee. But yeah, Dan literally works with my whole family because that's I did not know that there was this hole in my family of things that we weren't doing. And once again, it's only too late if you don't start now. So our generation started. My kids are already on a good trajectory of making sure that they're protected and they're starting to save. But it's a very different world than I think a lot of us may be used to. And we don't know what we don't know when they're there to help you. So yeah, so Dan, you're gonna email everybody. Is that cool? Because when you guys signed up, we literally did ask permission, so I don't want you to think that I'm sharing the information without that. But Dan, will you be emailing them soon? Like, should they reach
Yeah.
out to you first, or are you gonna reach out to them first?
Either way, we'll probably get it out this week at some point. It'll come from my assistant, Melissa, will be reaching out and then just coordinating a time if you're interested in having a conversation. Just coordinate a time that we'll want to set up like a half hour just to I like to do a Zoom because I like to see people, but um that meeting will just be getting to understand your situation, certainly share a little bit more detail of how we help people, and then we can take things from there. But as Nat said, there's no planning fee. I don't charge anything for this. There's no cost or anything. But that's why I do this. I'm here to help.
Yeah, it's great. And I thought that when you work with somebody like Dan, that you need to have a bazillion dollars. But I remember the first conversation with Dan, he was like, you could put away a few dollars a month. And I'm like, no, I can't. Do you remember? I was really adamant about it. I cannot save money. We do not have savings. There is nothing that we could cut. And he's like, try it. We'll start another money market account. You'll go in there. If you need it, you'll take it out. And don't get panicky. I can't tell you, I barely noticed it, but it was an amount that Dan was like, I think you're not going to notice this. And he was spot on. And every year, that's our vacation money, that's Christmas money. I've called it my secret savings still to this day, is what I call it. And even Big John, my husband, so my husband and my son are Bill John. So Big John will say, like, do we have secret savings? Like, let's do this. Like, we need to buy a new TV. How much have we got in secret savings? Like, it is so nice to have that and know that we have a little extra and it's not part of like our big retirement plan. It's just literally secret savings that when we want to do something a little bit frivolous, we don't have to worry about it. Like we know that we got a few pennies in the bank. So yeah, guys, for realsies, I don't know what I do without them. I don't know what you guys are doing without them, but you don't have to do it anymore because you got them. But thank you so, so, so much for playing with us today. Dan, I know I kept you longer. I'm sorry. I hope you're not mad at me. Okay, good. Matt, I don't know what you were really doing, but for real, guys, if you need anything, Dan's email is literally up there right now on his screen. So if you need something, you could email him right now. And they are wonderfully responsive. Dan and the rest of his team, I think he must beat them or something because they are so on point with everything. God only knows how he tortures them to make sure that they always get back to us. But I am very, very, very much in debt, not only personally as a Diaz, but professionally. I mean, a lot of that savings went right back into Twiniversity. So without that, I don't know what I'd do without you guys. All right, Dan, any final words for our peeps?
No, good luck, everybody. It's good to meet you. Hope to meet you all soon, one-on-one. But thanks, Nat.
You got it. All right, guys, have the best day ever. See you later, alligators. Dan, I'll talk to you later. Matt, I love you. Paige, I'll talk to you. And the rest of you guys in Twiniversity Town. If you need anything, you could email us at community@twiniversity.com. Or literally, if you have any messages or anything, you could slide into our DMs as well on any social platform. So you will never miss us. You have no excuse. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later, alligators. Bye,
Thank you
guys.
for joining. Nice to meet everybody.